Welcome to Theme 2, which is the last part of your Learning Unit 5 work. We're on page 240, which is Communication for Social Change. We're going to be discussing the role of modernization, dependency, and participatory paradigms in producing social change, and explain the three principles relevant to the participatory paradigm using practical examples. Okay, make sure you're on page 240. Now remember, we've been talking a lot about the US cultural imperialism of the domination of westernization and Americanization over other cultures and other countries. Now we're going to be talking about what can countries do in terms of changing and transforming as a culture, becoming a bit more dependent. But before we get to that, we have to talk about what has happened, which is that modernization and dependency of another culture. Have you ever heard the terms developed or underdeveloped or third world or developing countries? This section is going to talk about communication for social change and transformation and what those words mean in terms of a developing country depending on a developed country. So it's going to firstly discuss development and social transformation and then modernization and dependency. Okay, the firstly they discuss is South Africa developed or underdeveloped? Are we a developing country or a developed country? Development is arbitrary, they talk about, because we as a nation, we're always transforming. We could be classified as second world. Transformation can be both physical and psychological, and when a community decides to transform itself, we call that social transformation. It can take the place in terms of addressing water and healthcare issues, but there would be more to it. So you can read through this section what would occur in our country in terms of social transformation. The next section looks at modernization and dependency. Communication for social transformation has undergone so many changes, and these changes we call paradigms or shifts in how you think about something. So a paradigm of modernization that has a problem with power is called the participatory communication. Let's look at the history of the paradigm, the shift for social transformation. Modernization and dependency. At the end of World War II, the US developed a plan to rebuild war-devastated Europe, and this was known as the Marshall Plan. Europe was provided a higher standard of living there. The US is a prime example of a developed nation and the idea that Western countries should help developing countries to be like them. This usually means that developed countries have power over developing countries. The developed countries will have ascertained their knowledge, their Western methods, and their professions, which will hold power over developing countries. It doesn't sound too bad at all that a country would try to help another country, but there's going to be a problem because it's going to set its beliefs and practices to this country there. And even though we might need the country, sometimes we might be better off there. So say the problem arises when the knowledge and beliefs of the developed country starts to assert in their own onto the developing country to deny and underplay their own indigenous culture and how they would have technically done things. The developed countries believe development is a one-way, easy step-by-step linear evolutionary process, multifaceted and complex of growth. This simple process of development is called modernization, implying adoption of new behavior and technologies. But modernization will no doubt start to initiate changes and greater inequality for local and national. And you can read through all those examples there, and this is going to sound very familiar to a theory which is known as the hypodermic needle theory, which is injecting Western knowledge into another culture. And then they would assert and have these ideologies and these practices and these beliefs and these values, and slowly but surely their own culture would start to decrease. Another one they mention is the diffusion of innovation model, which is just the adoption of another culture and how it can slowly work into their own culture there. So I've been focusing mostly on the hypodermic one, but we also have other theories at play here, such as the diffusion of innovation, which is that in the modernization paradigm, they're saying that the individual will firstly accept the new innovation. They'll then work from there, start to engage with it, behave with it, and it'll start to become part of their lives.